All right, good afternoon and welcome to our special education indicator focus group for indicator 12, transition from part C to B. We are recording this session so that if we talk about anything and you have questions later, we will be sending the recording out to you as well as the slides we use today. There are some clickable links embedded, so you'll get all those hopefully within the next week as soon as we get our video converted over for you. So today we are going to talk about accessing your special education profile if you haven't already, review of the timeline that is specific to indicator 12. We're going to dive into the indicator overview, such as submitting your data reporting error verification forms, which it sounds like a couple of you may have already done that, but we're going to walk through that step for everyone. What it looks like for completing the self-review summary report. Holly already kind of said, even if we have a data reporting error that's verified by OEC, there are still steps within the self-review summary report and improvement plan that will need to be completed. So I'm glad that you're all here. We'll also talk about completing the improvement plan, the systemic improvement, and evidence of completion of the improvement plan activities. We'll go over some tips for meaningful and successful indicator required actions and some next steps for your team. The first part for today is if you haven't had a chance to take a look at your special education profile, there are some steps that we're going to go over, just how to log in, where you'll find it, and where to find more information. I'm going to quickly show you how to do that, I believe, and then we're going to let Holly walk through the steps for this indicator. I do have to stop sharing just for a second to pull up the right login. Okay, so this is linked for you. And also when you log in to your Ohio ID, you may or may not have as many tiles I have, or you may have more, but the one we're looking for is the special education profiles and ratings. Holly, do you remember if the sample one had indicator 12, or shall I pull up someone else?
It did not. I'm wondering if Kara would mind if we took a look.
If you can use Franklin, that's fine.
Thank you.
See, we started our day with you, Kara.
Now you're going to end it with me. Natalie's at home sick, so I'm just going to say it's A-okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep, we already know what we did. Like, we know how to fix it, I think, so.
All right. So when you go in and you select your district, we'll go over here to the special education profile and view your profile. And we're going to find our indicator 12 first, which it will be at the very top. And we know that this is an indicator for transition from part C to B. The target is 100%. So if we don't have 100% for any reason, then what's going to be not met. The important thing is that over here, the plus sign with more information, that's where we want to make sure that we are accessing so that we know what the steps are. So it gives us a brief description that indicator 12 is the percentage of children referred to IDEA Part C, which is early intervention, who are found eligible for Part B when they're to come to preschool, and who has an IEP implemented by their 3rd birthday. So when you pull this up for your district, you'll see some trend data for you to look at about when you've met that, and then of course today, for this year, it was not met. And there's some data notes that's more specific to indicator 12, I'm sure Holly's going to dive into. But if you scroll down to where it says print this action, this is going to have an outline of all of the action your district needs to do surrounding indicator 12. Also, if you want to know exactly the indicator 12 manual, if you see under where it says then it's non-compliant, it says indicator 12 manual. And if you click on that, it will download the manual that's specific for this indicator. Okay. And it goes through what the required actions are if you have a verified data reporting error, or if you don't. It goes through all of the levels of the self-review summary report, improvement plan, and system improvement, which Holly's going to talk to you guys about that. I just wanted to show you how to access your profile, how to access the manual, and then we're going to take a look at those due dates.
Okay. So as Lydia said, she referred to the special education profile link that contains your manual. And so a lot of the slides that we have embedded in the PowerPoint, which all of you will receive access to, we thought maybe it would be easier to try to, as opposed to trying to flip back and forth between the profile and some of these documents. So and for those of you who've been on pretty much the entire day, my apologies. I know this is redundant for some of these pieces, but within your manual, all of those varying levels that had all of those different actions, regardless if you had a data error that was verified versus just a record that was considered non-compliant and or both. All of those different actions are kind of outlined within the manual. So just know that you don't necessarily have to get into the profile every time that those things or pieces are reflected. And I'm going to mention this right off the get-go. This timeline comes specifically from your manual. And under this very first item or time frame of February 10th, where that's the due date for submitting your errors that you think might be occurring. The email address just looks like it just wasn't completed, or, you know, as part of copying and pasting, it didn't get fully listed there, but it would be the same email address that's listed here, the preschool special education at educationohio.gov. So just wanted to point that out. And then all of those items listed under what, those are the things that we're going to spend a little more time talking about. So outside of reporting errors on the 10th, our next big chunk of required actions would be completing the self-review summary report and the improvement plan, all by that March 31st date, which will be here before you know it. And then looking at that last column of, or last item is the due date of September 29th, where we're looking at the systemic transition tracking form, or that there was there's a statement saying that no children transition from Part C between those due dates of, or those dates between April 3rd and June 5th. And this is a new piece, so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. And then student record items for non-compliant timelines. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then evidence of completion for all of those improvement plan activities and documentation of the interagency agreement. Again, this indicator really is supported through another office for early learning and school readiness and preschool special ed. So there will be some aspects that are just slightly different in terms of forms. And this would be one of those forms. So specific to indicator 12, For those of you who have more than one finding or supporting districts, this looks very similar to some of our other supporting documents. So if you look at the verification instructions, it kind of just walks you through in terms of, data reporting errors are specific to entering incorrect data into EMIS, which we all know how that can happen. And in order to substantiate that error, the district has to provide documentation that the data reported is actually different than what's in the student record. And so they're giving you this first box here to kind of illustrate what the error is, and then providing evidence for it. And then by signing the form, you're acknowledging the following. And then if it's verified, then it continues to say the district will complete all required activities for the indicator as outlined in the process manual or the profile. And then the district will receive a lower score for the timely and accurate data. And then there's spots there for signatures, and then the submit button, once you have everything completed, will set up an email form. There's that part. And then this is the student record submission form. And very much like some of our other findings, oftentimes when we think about indicator 12 and a specific finding, we're only talking about one student. We don't often have a lot of students who are transitioning from our Part C early intervention to Part B preschool special education. So sometimes, again, we're doing this for one student, but this is how we'll submit specific information for each of our students. And so student records, there's kind of this clarifier, will be uploaded into the secure site using the doc upload site, again, to protect all of the personally identifying information. One form per indicator, don't use a form or don't use one form per record. But again, we're just using more often than not, it's a very small number of records. Submit student records to the secure site. And because we're submitting records to the secure site, we don't have to redact anything. In terms of the other documents that you have to submit, they're alerting you to go back to the manual to make sure you have all those required components, and then save items as one file per student, and name the file using the student record name from the list. And then they use this example, and then upload each student's record as one file. And again, they kind of walk you through what that should look like. And then this is the actual outline that contains all of those supporting documents that you should send. So you're going to complete that data reporting error verification form. You're submitting it to the preschool special ed, the student record submission form is going to go to the preschool special ed site here. And then you're going to submit the following items to the doc upload site, the consent form, the completed cover page, and section 4, which is the eligibility page and signature page of the ETR. And they're just saying to you, you're not uploading the entire document. The completed cover page in section 7, specially designed instruction, general factors, section 13 and 14 of the initial IEP. So they're very descriptive of what they want there. And then any other documentation that you have around the use of the non-compliance code. So parental choice, parent refused consent, child's health, or incorrect missing data. In a prior EMIS collection. And then they also clarify what other documents you might have. So your OP09 form, any other notices that you have, like emails, letters to parents, or phone logs, all of those different documentation pieces. Also different documentation supporting multiple attempts to hold meetings. is listed there. And then the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness will verify and approve errors before the district takes any further action. So we know that our next step after we're awaiting that notification from Office of Early Learning, and quite honestly, one of the first questions is how long will that take? I'm not exactly sure how long to tell you, but recognizing that your due date of March 31st for completing the self-review summary report and the improvement plan is all due by the 31st of March. So we know that we would want to be pretty timely with getting that notification back to our district. So I'm going to pull up the self-review summary report. And again, this will be required regardless if you have verified data errors. The first part of this form is just talking about your district self-review team that will kind of think about, what makes sense in terms of who should be on that team, especially when we think about students transitioning from Part C to Part B. There is a clarifier here that states an early childhood consultant from the SST must be listed as a member of your district self-review team and assist in completing the self-review summary report when non-compliance is involved. If you do have a verified data error, you would not be required to have a state support team person involved with that. Or with that aspect of the self-review summary report. So I would just want to clarify that. Looking at the self-review summary report and some of the questions, thinking specifically about who you would want to be involved on your team, I think it's helpful to think about all of anybody who's interacting with the family or the student. So our early intervention manager, we know that that person will be responsible or have a piece of the improvement plan in terms of signing off on the improvement plan. So I know trying to secure schedules can be daunting. So reaching out to that person to make sure that they're involved. Preschool supervisors, your early childhood intervention specialist, and your related service providers, school psychs are some of those folks that we think about. Ann Wrench, who is one of our early childhood consultants, and myself will be dividing and conquering for our districts who have this finding. Also in the self-review summary report, you'll kind of see some of these guiding questions and as you're completing the actual self-review summary report, but it's divided into topics. And what we'll do is I'm going to just kind of scroll through here. I don't know what makes more sense to start here or just go through those steps, but the guiding questions for verified data reporting errors. So for those of you who have submitted and Office of Early Learning has responded back and said, yes, indeed, it is a verified data reporting error, you're going to start here with the general issues reports, which allows the district to identify and correct data reporting errors before they become findings on the profile. And so you'll see a lot of items relating to EMIS and reporting. So the second question or topic is district practices regarding data reporting, and then specific training and technical assistance regarding data reporting. Further down is if it's not an issue of a data error, but specific to non-compliance, then you would be directed to complete section B. And so item 4 is a reflective process, and this would be specific to districts who had required actions in the previous 3 profile years. Oftentimes we get questions, well, do I need to fill this out? only if you had a previous finding. And I don't think anybody had a previous finding who from our region. So this question would be skipped. Looking at item or question 5, the specific topic is Part C, early intervention, to Part B, preschool special ed, transition requirements and procedures. Topic 6 is all around transition timelines from Part C, early intervention, to Part B, preschool special ed. And you'll see a lot of language around the interagency agreement requirement and making sure that there's specific training or that everyone has been trained and gone through the OCALI training. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Topic 7, for the initial IEPs that have been reported as non-compliance, not developed and implemented on or before the child's 3rd birthday. That is really the premise of the finding for our students, is making sure that they have that IEP in place by their 3rd birthday. And then there are questions under topic 8, district training and technical assistance regarding Part C, early intervention, Part B, preschool special ed, transition requirements and procedures. Item 9 is around longitudinal history of compliance, easy for me to say. And then topic 10, investigation of records, using the results from the information provided back from Office of Early Learning. So that's kind of those questions in a nutshell. And I think it's helpful to review those before scheduling your meeting, just so you ensure that you have players on your team that will be helpful in terms of addressing the questions that you will then analyze as you look at the different questions and how they're formatted. Each question or each topic section you can type right into the document and list your responses. There's an opportunity to kind of collect or create a summary statement based on the data from the section that you answered questions to. Areas of concern you'll identify based on the summary of data. Is this truly an area of concern, yes or no? If it is an area of concern, then we would be looking at coming up with a root cause for each of those areas of concern. And we'll talk a little more about root cause in some of the later slides. And then for each area of concern, we will indicate whether or not it's we'll indicate that it is a priority, and then we will rank it highest to lowest to help us kind of think about our improvement plan activities. And I'm just going to pop back up here to the top. So using all of those questions, this is where we talk about the involvement of the state support team. And there is a clarifier. This may be completed prior to meeting with the regional SST. So it does look a little bit different across districts, across programs in terms of how this information is captured. You could create a separate format to kind of have individual team members input data just as a way to kind of give everybody an opportunity to respond. If you use a Google Doc of some sort, just know that the department is not able to accept or access Google Docs. So I know some teams have used that in the past, but you'll have to convert it back to a format within the self-review summary report. In terms of the data gathering questions, once you respond to that, then that's where you're going to input that information into the data summary box. If this is an area of concern, this is telling you you're going to type yes into the green area of concern box. If no, of course, mark it no. Then for any of the sections where the district team answers no, you're going to leave the root cause part blank. And then if looking at item 6, utilizing a root cause analysis method, the team's going to use that information that you've inputted into the form from the data summary box to kind of identify those specific issues that led to the non-compliance, and to consider how we might mitigate those areas. So once the team agrees, and you're going to record that information in the root cause box, and then you'll revisit all of the areas that you've responded yes to in the red, and then prioritize them. And those are the areas that will be addressed as part of your improvement plan. As you're going through this process, just while we're here, it's helpful if you have somebody designated on your team to kind of type in some of those responses, especially if you have a larger group, depending on who your team is. Sometimes we find that that's helpful. Giving the questions out to your team members prior to your meeting time, just so everybody's familiar with those big topic areas, and then the information contained, so that everybody's prepared prior to the meeting. If you already have meetings established, or internal monitoring teams, or something that a structure that's already present within your program or district, maybe that's a format that you could use in terms of addressing these questions. So any questions on the self-review summary report? Lydia, anything that I blew through?
Nope, I think you got it.
And then these were just those very similar guidelines that we just reviewed in the self-review summary report. And then this just kind of takes us to root cause analysis. When we think about going through that process, one of the things we want to share is that there's not a prescribed method that Office of Early Learning or OEC is saying you must use. But I think part of some of our other meetings or things that we're working through, there's probably some form of methods that you're currently using for maybe something else, but Fishbone, 5 Whys, those are typically the methods that we see more frequently being used, or a combination of those. But it's really that whole process of helping us dig a little deeper and helping us identify what some of those underlying causes are that are helping to contribute to the specific finding, which is, not being able to get those IEPs in place by the 3rd birthday, or even thinking about our EMIS reporting. And so this is the improvement plan, and this is where we start seeing some differences from previous years being built into this plan in your manual, which I believe is on the next slide that we'll share with you. There's a nice kind of list of guidance for each one of these boxes that you're required to submit, and you'll recognize for this particular indicator, it has its own improvement plan, where some of our other indicators we're using other plans. So we're indicating or we're providing a summary in this very first chunk based on all of that information from your self-review summary report, and we're just going to provide a summary based on those specific areas of concern that we identified. The reflection question, excuse me, if the district hasn't written an improvement plan for this indicator, you're going to skip this part. This will be not applicable. There'll be this long-term goal. You'll include a goal that is outside of the profile timeline, and then versus the short-term goal, which would be a goal that would address our concerns that we have, but within the specific profile timeline. So just a clarifier of what they're considering long-term versus short-term goal in terms of addressing our concerns. Whoops, sorry, I always do that. In terms of activities, you'll see in this next box a place for you to outline the specific activities that will help us meet the short-term goals. And so you see the very first 3 items would be required for all districts. So I know many of you are reviewing your policies, practices, and procedures. And so this transition from Part C to Part B would need to be part of your procedures, investigation of records, and then a district interagency agreement. So we know that our districts are required to have agreements with our early intervention providers. And this looks a little bit differently. I know they're mostly countywide agreements, but we'll be required to make sure that those are submitted, and making sure that when we submit that those agreements are current. And then looking at this next item, the OCALI transition and interagency agreement training. For the most part, our regions are covered with this training, meaning that they've gone through the initial training that has been provided through OCALI. However, we do have one county in our region, Muskingum County, which has not participated as a county. We are trying to secure that training for Muskingum. Mrs. Kramer has been trying to reach out to our Muskingum County districts and early intervention providers to make sure that we offer this training, and we can kind of check this off our things to do or required actions as part of the activities that are listed here. And then training, other training that might be needed for indicator 12. And then there's a spot to list all of the resources that are needed to support all of those activities, a spot to record the activity timeline, which may or may not be September 29th, but we know by September 29th, all activities with evidence submitted are due to Office of Early Learning or OEC. And then the next box is recording what type of evidence we're going to use to be able to demonstrate completion of the activity. So being thoughtful about what types of evidence we list there to kind of show or demonstrate that. Below are the signature boxes. And so district personnel who's responsible for implementation, and then our superintendent, the early intervention contract manager, again, that's new, and then the state support team, early childhood person that worked with your team. Any questions around the improvement plan? Like I said, this next slide kind of has some of those general guidelines for what to kind of put in those specific boxes. Again, your summaries all around your self-review summary report, your long and short-term goals, completion of your activities. Those are all pre-populated that are required depending on which are specific to indicator 12. They give you the timeline, and you'll see other indicators kind of listed in here that will not apply for indicator 12. And there are additional notes down here at the bottom that if there are revisions needed for your improvement plan, the document has to be revised and re-signed, and of course resubmitted to its entirety. Under reporting. So this is a new part of the report that we have asked clarification for. In your layers of your special ed profile, what the question is whether or not all districts will be required to complete this, or if it was just because of how your required actions were listed in the profile. So as you read through these directions, you're completing step one, putting all your background information in. And then step two, you're listing all students transitioning from Part C early intervention to the district between April 3rd and June 5th. And then step three, you're going to randomly select 5 students on the list and submit documentation by September 29th. And then upload this worksheet to the monitoring system. So like I said, this is a new piece. I'm wondering if all districts will have to submit this or if it will be dependent upon profile. And so this is kind of addressing this piece. Download the Indicator 12 tracking form. You're going to complete the form for all children. Transitioning from Part C to the district between the 1st of August and the 1st of November of that school year. Submit button to actually, once you've completed that transition data tracking form, which will be then sent to this preschool special ed email. And then the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness will review the information reported through EMIS and the transition data for all those students who are transitioning from Part C. And then the discrepancy between EMIS data reported by the district and the tracking form will result in one of 2 outcomes. All records reviewed were found to be compliant and determined to be a result of data reporting error, or at least one record reviewed was found to be non-compliant, giving us or resulting in a combination of non-compliance and a data reporting error. So if there's no discrepancy between the data reported to EMIS by the district and the transition data tracking form, no further action is required. And then the district will be notified by Office of Early Learning. And so Janet, to respond to your question, I am not clear yet on this aspect. This is a new piece. We did put a feeler out to Office of Early Learning to specify whether or not all districts are required to do it, or if there would be a clarifier in your special education profile, those different levels of required actions. When I looked specifically at all of our districts who had that finding, I could not tell one way or the other based on what was outlined. And I've also worked with another district who is having some reporting issues or under-reporting issues that did not have any flags at all. So I just want to make sure that we're interpreting that correctly before giving any specific guidance. So in terms of systemic improvement, we'll make sure that all of the evidence that we've outlined in our improvement plan that is listed We'll make sure that that is submitted by September 29th. That's one of those big pieces that we'll make sure occurs by that timeline. And then these are some of those tips for a successful indicator review. Some of the things we've mentioned, and these are kind of more general type things, but as you're submitting your data error reports, making sure that you're using the appropriate forms. Again, some of those look very similar to some of the other forms, making sure that if the document has a submit button, there will be an email that's set up to submit the document to the OEC profile, the investigation of records. So again, just for some of these tips don't always specifically apply. And then the self-review summary report, just make sure that you're making sure to complete all of the questions in our improvement plan. Same thing, make sure if there's a spot that needs to be signed or information within a specific box, just make sure that that information is complete. And then systemic improvement, outline some of those things that you would want to be mindful of. We talked about the Google form that OEC, Office of Early Learning, are not able to access those. I think we know that we've been relying on our SST colleagues to kind of help support us through this process of all of our indicator reviews. But as we mentioned earlier, it will be our early learning consultants who will be supporting districts with this particular indicator finding. The monitoring application I hadn't touched yet. I wanted to show you this for those of you who have not been with us all day or parts of the day. This is where I think probably some of the more challenging aspects to the whole process is just finding where you need to put things. So when it comes to the self-review summary report, when it comes to the improvement plan, we'll come here to the monitoring application and looking specifically for the special education program monitoring link. And then I'm just going to pull up a district. Oh my, I think my fingers are getting tired. We'll do a search. Still must have typed it wrong. And then you can pull up the district, and from a previous records, you can see what has been already uploaded for a district, or when you get in there for your district, this might be the first time that you're adding documents or that you can see documents listed. But by clicking the add, then you can start uploading those records into the monitoring application. Go back here. So thinking about the improvement plan or the self-review summary report, are there any specific questions that you have about any of those two big requirements or completing those two pieces?
Holly, I put something in chat.
Okay. I would love to be able to answer that question because I'm not an EMIS person, nor when I was a director, I relied on my EMIS secretary. And so I'm not sure specifically, and I don't know if anybody else is on the call who is more savvy with EMIS than I.
The first part of that review, self-review, talks about who accesses the general issues reports. And that would be me, of course, but I never came across one for that specific indicator. I have seen ECE students counting as ECE for preschool, and there was also one for year-to-year counts of reported preschool transition conference events, but I haven't seen anything that would pinpoint if a child's IEP was not in place by third birthday that would trigger me to check that. Although we're good this year because we're using Crosscheck, which is a new software that also checks your EMIS data, and that check is on there.
Okay.
So for anybody that's heard about Crosscheck, if you're using Progress Book Dazzle Frontline, it is a awesome tool because it picks up a lot of things that you're never going to see in your data or get error reports on.
And it very well could be, Lisa, like for some of these questions, you might just respond to that question saying, I'm not aware of a general issues report, and that would give us this level of information.
Okay.
And then maybe it's us digging a little deeper to figure out more specifically around that report that you're after. Or that
I just don't imagine there is a specific one to that. And I'm sure there are that would probably cover other people's indicators, but I don't think that one's out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. And it definitely could have been whoever created some of these questions, not being savvy with EMIS either to know that that does or doesn't exist, right? But that will be one that as we meet with Office of Early Learning or get some more specific feedback to ask that question.
So the only question I have, this is Jamie, is just to verify that once this is returned back, that it was, a data error entry, and that's all that it was, we don't have to do the improvement plan, right? Because what I'm reading here is it says what's required when a district's found non-compliant. And it said when you're found non-compliant, the district must develop an improvement plan. But am I interpreting that wrong? Because it seems like if it's a data error, it's not that you're non-compliant, you just had a data error.
So I'm going to open up the manual here and look away if this makes you dizzy.
Okay, I do have a copy of the manual as well right here in front of me.
So it does indicate that you will complete an improvement plan.
Okay.
And scrolling. Sorry. So it looks like it's on, I can't even tell the page number. When we download these forms, you can't tell the page numbers. So districts with verified data reporting errors only, you'll complete the self-review summary report, and then it clarifies that an improvement plan for data reporting errors only will be completed.
So is there a separate improvement plan then for data report errors only? Because I'm looking at
It would be the same plan. And so like it says, the improvement plan must include root causes for data reporting errors, actions, and detailed policies, practices, and procedures. And so some of those aspects, when we think about the, let's see here. I'm going to pull up the improvement plan. So when you think about those.
yeah, this is, I don't know, it seems like the paperwork's conflicting. Because I have the profile 22, 23 new improvement plan requirements. And I get where you're coming from too, but this paper clearly says that if it's found non-compliant. that you have to do the indicator, you must develop an improvement plan.
Yeah, so there's different layers as you go through that manual that outlines, there's like several different, so you'll see it kind of starts with districts with a verified data reporting error only. There's a self-review summary, the page that we were just on. And if you continue to scroll, I'll go back to if you continue to scroll, then it will, of course, I lost oh, there it is. As you continue to scroll, and then there's also systemic improvements. Then you go on to districts flagged with non-compliance due to underreporting. Then there's districts with non-compliant timelines for indicator 12. So there's multiple actions or varying levels of actions within the manual that, depending on if you have errors or not, will alert you to kind of what you have to pay attention to in terms of what you're required to do. Then there's a combination. There's districts with data reporting errors and non-compliant timelines. But yes, you are correct. Your improvement plan would probably look a little different.
So if you log into your actual profile again and go to the more information, so I'm not saying that you don't have a data reporting error, but we have to wait and make sure that they verify that, because what we may think is that's up to them and we don't know. But if you look under where it says districts with verified data reporting errors, that's once you've submitted and they've said, yes, we're verifying that it is a data reporting error. Then it says for your self-review summary report that you do section A, and that for your improvement plan that you complete it. And then you also have evidence of actions completed dates. So that first section is when you have a verified reporting error. And it has the direct link for the SRSR and the improvement plan for you. And then the second layer, like Holly is saying, if they say it wasn't a data reporting error for anyone who already knows it's non-compliance, then it has the same thing. So there's just it's sectioned out to be clear for which it is, whether it's a verified data reporting error or if it is non-compliance. And sometimes districts have both. I believe last year wasn't for indicator 12, but we had a data reporting error. There were multiple records. So one was verified as a data reporting error, one was not a data reporting error. So that's why that third layer, it even says you would complete, if you had both, you complete A and B. So the only difference is if you do have a verified reporting error, that you complete section A. If it's just non-compliant, you don't complete section A.
And in their response back to you, they will verify whether it's an error, non-compliance, whatever they find, so that it will then direct you to then which part of the profile we should be taking a look at for those next steps. Speaking of next steps, there are, thinking about the due dates and, kind of making sure that we're monitoring when things are due in regards to self-review summary report and improvement plans, as well as our systemic corrections, marking our calendars to make sure that we're meeting those deadlines, and then thinking about our review team that we're going to pull together to help us go through the self-review summary report and the improvement plan. And then Ann and I will be working with our districts who have a finding. And so we'll be in touch to kind of look at calendars and secure some dates. And then just making sure that any of the forms, the self-review summary report, the improvement plan, all of those things that you have those ready to go, especially, as you start working in your teams to complete those processes, any resources that you need or data that might be helpful when we start plugging in or responding to those questions in the self-review summary report. And remember, when we're coordinating times, we have to include or think about our early intervention manager as well. Any other questions? We allowed a little extra time if there were questions, but this kind of wraps up the presentation. But we'll stay on, and if there's additional questions, our main goal for today was to make sure that you kind of had an opportunity to kind of see the required forms and navigate the profile page and just kind of understand those big timelines and those pieces. Like I said, indicator 12 is a little bit different with some of these added components for this school year.
Thank you, Holly and
You're
Lydia.
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much, Holly and Lydia. I know you have been doing this all day and prepping for it for a while. So appreciate both of you, and appreciate all the SST consultants that stayed on as well, just to make sure that we're able to support everyone and get these things completed. So
Yeah, thanks everyone. We appreciate our SST colleagues. I know this is a lot of information, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks,
You're
everybody.
welcome.
Thank you.